Hello, everybody. Hey. We're in TEDx right now, and I'm going to need a lot more energy than that. So let's try that again. Hello, everybody. Hey, so it took a long journey to get here, and we're going to touch on that in a second. So I'm going to need just a little bit of activity from you guys, and I've always wanted to do that. See, I'm a failed hip-hop star, right? So I'm going to pretend that I'm on a hip-hop stage right now. So when I say TED, you yell X. TED? X. TED? X. Amazing. Everybody had some lunch, and I thought you needed a little bit of energizing right now, right? Some smiling faces now. So, as mentioned, my name is Elfried Samba, and the best way that I describe myself is that I'm a community builder, I'm a tastemaker, and I'm a storyteller. And in true storytelling nature, I'm going to tell you a bit of a journey about how you're randomly listening to a guy in a hat, first and foremost, and the gap that I had to bridge to get here. So, before anything else, I was born in the Democratic Republic of Congo, so Central Africa, near the equator, so hot and tropical. So you can imagine my shock when our parents moved us to the UK and we saw snow for the first time. My siblings are right there, so they know exactly how those days were, right? So we came to the country, we knew no one knew us. But armed with the golden ticket of escaping and survivor's guilt, we knew that we had to make the most of that golden ticket, right? The aspiration was to be successful, and we wanted to make sure that we're not just a number and they were an exception to the rule. So when I want to achieve something, I always talk about the importance of having a delusional dream. But before you can have a delusional dream, you need to have references. It's almost like they give you permission to have that dream and execute. So the first place that you go is you look at home. So that's what I did. So I thought I was going to be a doctor like my dad, and then I realized that I was shit at science. Right? So I wasn't going to go very far. So I was like, okay, science is not my thing. Maybe I'm going to look at my mom. And my mom is an entrepreneur, thoroughbred, creative, always working on something, has never worked for anybody, right? And my whole thing was, well, maybe I can be a little bit more like my mom. And when I was thinking about that, I thought, okay, so if I'm going to be an entrepreneur, a creative, who are the best entrepreneurs that exist out there? And maybe I can find someone that looks like me, has gone through the same experiences, so that I can model them. But when I started to look for examples at the time, this is who I saw. Resemblance, right? Okay, so let's address the elephant in the room. One, we don't look the same. And two, I never wear suits, right? So already we're in there. But what you can clearly establish is that, in my mind, the gap was huge, right? So I didn't know where to start. So I said, you know what, let's look into the community and see what people that look like me, come from my background, are thriving in. And maybe that can give me some examples. Now, these are all the people that I found. And as you can tell, they're all in entertainment and sports and the arts, yes, but then at the time, they were not in business. Actually, my biggest idol in this was Thierry Henry, but I was a terrible footballer. I lacked the va-va-voom. But what I did realize from the examples at hand is the power of being multi-creative and being a showman. You need to make sure that whenever you stand in front of a crowd, like today, or whenever you do something, people remember who you are. And that was the lasting message. But still, that wasn't going to help me get onto my journey of becoming a creative and entrepreneur. So I had to get creative. So the first person I stumbled onto that was kind of speaking my language was a guy called Steve Jobs, right? It was the fact that he only wore black, as you can tell, right? And it was the iPhone keynote in 2007. My simple brain couldn't understand the technology behind it, but he made it so easy for me to get it. The term 1,000 songs in your pocket stuck to my mind about the beauty of taking very complicated information and translating it in a simple story. They always say, well, Einstein says that if you can't explain something to a 7-year-old, then do you actually know what you're talking about? And Steve Jobs exemplified that. The next person was this kid called Mark Zuckerberg, who invented this app called Facebook that me and my friends back home were using to communicate. And I found out about him, one, by watching The Social Networker and hearing that he turned down $1 billion from Yahoo. I don't know about you, but if I told my Congolese mom that somebody offered me $1 billion and I was going to say no. She was going to ship me back on the first flight back home. But I loved the rebellious nature. I loved the idea that he was onto something. He had a delusional dream and he was going to pursue it. And that made me really, really excited about the opportunity to bridge marketing and community together. And I thought that this social media marketing thing was going to be a thing. Now, as I said before, I still needed the permission to pursue my dream. So I couldn't get out of it that easy. I had to find somebody that was kind of speaking about business. So here comes Jay-Z. Jay-Z has a line that says, women lie, men lie, numbers don't, right? And that got me really, really excited about the merger of arts and science. And the fact that it doesn't matter what your opinion is, you have to execute and have the numbers to back it. And I thought, okay, storytelling and marketing, community building, and taste making, and also the art and science merger, and I have everything that I need to go and convince the academics back at university. Now, I did a dissertation that was titled How I Felt That Small to Medium-Sized Businesses Would Leverage Social Media to Dethrone the Larger Competitors. It got marked down for the lack of Harvard references, right? They said I was basically speaking in fairy tale land, right? But I graduated anyway. You can clearly tell that my doctor dad was excited about the fact that his son was going to tweet for a living, right? Dr. Dad, tweeter. But my goal was to be the reference. If you can't find the reference, why don't you be the reference, right? So I said, okay, what I'm going to do is if the academics don't believe in me or aren't listening to me, I'm going to go to the practical people. And I went to I was going to look for a job, and I had like 25 interviews, and no one gave me a job. They didn't want to stop doing this print thing that was happening, and they felt that, well, social media will never be more than a kid's plaything. It was only when I went to the agency world where they finally almost like allowed me to sit in on pitches and talk about the social media thing that people started to listen. And then I stumbled onto this video on YouTube from this guy that was yelling at me, like literally yelling at me, called Gary Vaynerchuk. He was talking about the importance of jab, 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 right hook, which is all about give, 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 and then ask. And the importance of giving value to people up front before you even ask for anything in return. So I said, oh, he speaks like me, like swearing on stage and on videos, but then he understands the fundamentals of giving value up front before asking for anything in return. Now, where can I execute this? I'm not attractive enough for Instagram. I'm not creative enough for YouTube, but I'm nerdy enough for LinkedIn. Exactly, everyone's laughing. But I thought, okay, let me focus there. And then I was like, well, who's going to be my target? I found out about these 19-year-olds that were driving an RDR8 around like Birmingham, and they set up this company called Gymshark. What a stupid name. I thought at the time. But everybody was loving it. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I could connect with everybody that works at Gymshark and give content that they would find valuable, and maybe I could get a job, right? So I did that, and this is the post that I posted on my first day. I had one interview and the rest was history, and I was at Gymshark HQ in 2015. I talked about the fact that I was looking forward to creating some great community experiences. Watch this space. And the rest is history. So 7 years at Gymshark, we did a lot of things, going from a company that nobody knew about, driven by two 19-year-olds driving RDR8s with a stupid name, as people would say, to now becoming synonymous in the fitness industry with a thriving community. And actually, my reference was true. So I know this is great in video montage, but then what does that actually mean? Remember, Jay-Z said, women lie, men lie, numbers don't. So what does that actually mean from numbers? So in 7 years at Gymshark, we went from having 24 employees to 1,000. We went from having 1 million followers to 20 million. And we went from an £8 million business to a £1.4 billion business. All through the power of social media. So my lecturer had to write back to me a few years later and apologize. But actually, the biggest number and the biggest validation that I ever got was this one. My dad's watching, by the way, right? Not only did he have one Samba working for Gymshark, he had two. And it was the talk of the town in his practice. They're like, are you Elfried Samba's dad? That's funny, right? So it just showcased that actually, when you believe in something that is delusional and you relentlessly go and pursue it, that effectively your parents will come around. But, so that was great, and we created a really great business, but I didn't think that my impact was done. I still believe that although I helped a company thrive, I was not visible enough because people didn't know that I existed. And other people were still going through the same journey. I had to do more. At the same time, I started speaking to a friend of mine. I used to work at a nightclub called Gatecrasher Birmingham when I was at university, right? Handing out flyers, getting people to go in, promo, all that stuff. We thought we were cool. And I was talking to him because he started working with a guy called Stephen Bartlett on a company called Social Chain. And we were both talking about the industry and the fact that there's not a lot of people that look like us that actually have companies in the space. And we said that actually, if we knew what we knew now, we would start our own business. So we did. And the thing is, we were all in cushy jobs, it was all really secure, and we're basically risking everything. And we took the leap to try to bridge the gap. And what happened was, it was worth it. Our first year was insane, working with the likes of Netflix, Bumble, Cheesecake Factory, McDonald's, FIFA, the lot. But it wouldn't have happened if we had tried to bridge the gap and take that leap, right? And also, alongside that, I said, and everybody always challenges me, well, if you can help build a brand, can you build your own? And I said, okay, I'm gonna do the same approach. Everybody on LinkedIn is talking about themselves, how much money they made, the new job they had. No one's saying what's in it for everybody else. So I said, I'm just gonna be the first person on LinkedIn that's gonna go in and give value to everybody else. And what happened is my account became the second most influential page on LinkedIn globally because I was unselfish. And also, in the world of social media, I got mentioned among some strange names. I was the 5th most influential person in social media across platforms. Too bad my bank account doesn't measure up. Right? So I find that, so in 5 years, I went from being shy, a kid from the Congo, didn't know anybody, wanted to grow, had a delusional dream, didn't know where to start. Helped Gymshark grow through my own art, and then eventually set up a business that was really successful. But in 5 years on LinkedIn, which is super crazy, we got 500 million impressions, 9 million reactions, over 350,000 followers, the second overall LinkedIn, all that stuff. But actually, the thing I was proudest of on LinkedIn is, do you know no one used to laugh on LinkedIn back in the day? And actually, because I had such a thriving, happy community, we were responsible for the release of the happy reaction on the platform. Right? So, stats are cool, all of that's really cool, and that's great for me, but I want to leave you guys with like the importance of why it is that we're doing it. It's not about the adoration, it's about the impact. My most successful post by far, and the thing that changed the trajectory of what I was posting, was when I hit this frustrating point that nobody was caring about the power of representation. And I literally just put a post out that touched me that said, representation matters. And that was it. The post got 220,000 likes on LinkedIn, 20 million impressions, right? And it was the one that I was most proud of. And what that did is, it meant that so many people felt seen, so many people wanted me to get involved in community-led activities, and everybody just felt like there was a reference point that was going in the same journey, which made me realize that it's more than just building businesses, it's more than just driving revenue, it's more than just the accolades. It's always about the impact that you're able to drive to your community, but then also to the wider world. And some of that wider world impact was really weird. Like, I actually got mentioned on a TikTok, a shout out, which is pretty cool. You could be a musician, you could be an Elfried Samba, which is cool. For me, that was better than all the other stuff that I talked about. I somehow ended up on a panel with Gary Neville and Jessica Ennis. I don't know what I was doing there. And then I talked about my favorite footballer. I also met Thierry Henry, right? So what does that actually mean? Not bad for a kid from the Congo, right? First, to bridge the gap, you have to acknowledge that the gap exists and that it's not a failure that you're at that starting point, right? Then you need to find the reference. Success leaves clues. Study those that have come before you. Then execute. Action moves you forward, right? Unreasonable leaps start with a reasonable step. Then be visible. Document your journey. Visibility keeps you accountable, right? And then, when it's all said and done, pass it on. Bridging the gap for yourself is great, but then who else are you taking on the journey with you? And who else have you inspired, right? And finally, although the gap from home to the world may be large, as I mentioned, an unreasonable leap starts with a reasonable step. Start by solving problems and adding value to people at home, your friends, and in your community. And if you do that consistently, you might just put a dent in the world. Thank you very much.